Chapter 1. Silence is not an absence. It is a shield forged from terror and time. For 8 years, keeping my lips sealed had kept me breathing, reducing me to nothing more than a ghost haunting the stone corridors of Obsidian Keep. But tonight, the shield fractured. The blood moon banquet was supposed to be a celebration of the harvest. Instead, it became an abattoir. The attack happened between one breath and the next. The grand chandeliers extinguished. A metallic hiss cut through the dark. Then came the overwhelming stench of ozone and copper. I huddled beneath the grand oak table, clutching a silver serving tray to my chest. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. Screams erupted around me. Boots thudded against the polished marble. Above the chaos, a roar tore through the air. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated dominance. Vayne, the Alpha King. A cloud of glittering dust rained down from the vaulted ceiling. Silver powder, toxic and blinding to his kind. I heard the king stumble, his colossal frame crashing into a pillar. He cursed, swiping at his eyes. The silver burned through the air, burning my own lungs, but it was lethal to the wolves. Through the haze, a shadow detached itself from the gloom. An assassin draped in dark leather moved with terrifying silence. He held a jagged blade coated in dark, venomous sap. He was stepping right toward the blinded king. Vayne swung his fists, relying on instinct, but the silver dust clouded his senses. The assassin raised the poisoned blade, aiming directly for the king's unprotected throat. Philosophy dictates that survival requires selfishness, but as the blade descended, a primal instinct hijacked my lungs. The invisible lock I had kept on my throat for 8 long years shattered. "Look out!" The whisper was infinitesimal, a mere breath of sound. But in the heightened hearing of a predator, it struck like thunder. Vayne pivoted. He did not hesitate. His hand shot out, capturing the assassin's wrist before the blade could fall. A sickening snap echoed through the hall as the king broke the man's arm. With a brutal, fluid motion, Vayne swept his other hand across the assassin's chest. The threat was eliminated before the body even hit the floor. The remaining guards flooded the hall, their torches piercing the gloom. But I did not look at the light. I scrambled backward into the deepest corner of the shadows, my hands covering my mouth. I had spoken. I had broken the cardinal rule of my existence. The king stood amidst the wreckage. Blood dripped from his claws. His eyes were squeezed shut against the burning silver, but his chest heaved as he inhaled sharply. He was scenting the air, looking for the source of the sound, looking for me. "Leave," Vayne commanded his guards. His voice was a lethal rumble that vibrated through the floorboards. "All of you, now." The soldiers did not question him. They dragged the dead away and sealed the iron doors, plunging the hall back into isolating stillness. I held my breath. My lungs burned for oxygen, but I remained perfectly still. The king turned his head toward my hiding spot. He was blind, but he did not need his eyes. He moved with terrifying grace. He stalked toward the table, the scent of pine and dark earth rolling off his skin, drowning out the copper tang of the room. He reached beneath the timber frame, his hand vast and slick with gore, clamped around my throat. He dragged me out into the open, pressing my spine hard against the icy marble floor. The heat radiating from his towering body was suffocating. He leaned down until I could feel the fierce heat of his breath against my cheek. "You have a voice," Vayne snarled, his grip firm but strangely precise, careful not to crush my windpipe. "Open your mouth, or I will break it open." Chapter 2. The royal chambers felt like a gilded cage. Tapestries of crushed velvet lined the towering walls, and a fire blazed in the hearth, offering a warmth that could not reach the ice in my veins. Vane paced before the hearth. His vision had returned, though his amber eyes still glowed with a feral intensity. He had ordered me locked in his personal quarters, a command that sent a ripple of shock through the castle staff. I sat stiffly on the edge of a velvet chaise, clutching the fabric of my apron. The heavy oak doors creaked open. Pippa, my only friend in this bleak fortress, stumbled inside. The guard shoved her lightly before securing the door again. She looked terrified, her ginger curls sticking out in wild directions. "Translate for her," Vane ordered. He did not look at Pippa. His burning gaze remained fixed solely on me. I raised my hands, my fingers moving in rapid, practiced gestures. "Tell him the silver dust made him hallucinate. I cannot speak." Pippa swallowed hard. She looked at the king, then back at me, her eyes wide with panic. Your Majesty," she squeaked. She says the dust made your brain fuzzy. She definitely can't talk. She's as mute as a stone. Always has been." Vane stopped pacing. He turned his head slowly, his expression lethal. "Do not lie to me. I heard her." I signed again, more aggressively. "Tell him the assassin must have whispered." "She suggests the dead guy did it," Pippa offered, her voice pitching up an octave. "Maybe he had a very high, girly voice? It happens." Vane let out a low, menacing growl. Pippa squeaked and took 3 steps backward. The king advanced toward me, his boots making no sound on the thick rugs. I shrank back against the cushions. "Get out," Vane commanded Pippa. "But sire, she needs out." The command carried the crushing weight of alpha authority. Pippa whimpered, offered me an apologetic glance, and fled the room. We were alone. The air grew thick, charged with an undeniable friction. Vane stepped directly into my personal space. The scent of rain-soaked pine and dark spices wrapped around me, dizzying in its potency. "I know what I heard," he said softly. He braced his arms on either side of my body, trapping me against the back of the chaise. "And I know what I smell." My pulse skyrocketed. I averted my eyes, staring at the intricate stitching on his tunic. He leaned closer. His nose brushed along the curve of my jaw, inhaling deeply. A shock of electricity shot down my spine at the contact. "You smell like terror," he murmured against my skin. But beneath that, vanilla and ozone, like a storm waiting to break. I shoved at his chest. It was like pushing against solid iron. He didn't budge. Instead, his hand came up to capture both of my wrists, pinning them effortlessly with one hand against the velvet cushion. The tension stretched, snapping tight between us. My body betrayed me, leaning infinitesimally toward his heat. His gaze dropped to my lips. I saw the struggle etched across his features, the war between the civilized king and the primal beast lurking just beneath his skin. He lowered his head until our mouths were a breath apart. The anticipation was an ache in my lower belly. "My wolf recognized you the moment you made a sound," Vane whispered, his voice rough and possessive. He dragged his gaze back up to meet mine. "If you refuse to speak to me as a man, you will whimper beneath my wolf. You are my mate." And panic is a cold, suffocating tide. I bolted the moment Vane left the chambers to address his war council. The revelation of the mate bond meant he would never let me go. He would pry my secrets from my throat. And if he discovered what I truly was, his enemies would use me to destroy his kingdom. I had to run. I slipped through the servant passages and found Pippa in the laundry quarters. My frantic signs communicated everything she needed to know. "We have to leave. Now." Pippa was clumsy, dropping a basket of linens with a loud clatter, but she was loyal. She helped me pack a small canvas bag with dried meat and a stolen hunting knife. We waited until the moon was high and the courtyard shadows lengthened. We moved across the cobblestones, sticking to the blind spots between the torches. The western gate was close. Freedom was just beyond the iron portcullis. A shadow detached itself from the parapet above. I did not hear the assassin until he landed. 4 rogues dropped into the courtyard, their eyes gleaming with unnatural malice. They had bypassed the outer patrols. They were here to finish the job. One of them lunged, not for me, but for Pippa. She tripped over her own feet, falling hard onto the stones. The rogue raised a silver-plated broadsword, aiming directly for her chest. There was no time to push her away, no time to throw a stone. I opened my mouth, drawing a breath that pulled from the very center of my soul. "Stop!" The word did not merely echo, it detonated. A shockwave of pure silver energy erupted from my lips. The sound rippled through the courtyard, warping the air itself. The assassin above Pippa was thrown backward, crashing into the stone wall. The other 3 hit the dirt, clapping their hands over their bleeding ears. The blast echoed through the keep. Within seconds, the heavy courtyard doors burst open. Vane rushed out, followed by a dozen elite guards. But as the remnants of my voice washed over them, the guards collapsed to their knees. Even Vane stumbled. He dropped to one knee, clutching his chest, his amber eyes wide with a mixture of agony and awe. I stood in the center of the courtyard, my chest heaving. The illusion was dead. I was no mute servant. I was a Silver Siren, the last of an ancient bloodline whose voice could command the moon, strip a wolf of its power, or heal a fatal wound. And I had just exposed myself to the entire world. Vane looked at me. He saw the shimmering silver aura fading around my body. He realized, in that frozen moment, that his destined mate was a living weapon. Before he could speak, a colossal boom shook the earth. The western gates buckled. Iron groaned and snapped. The massive wooden doors shattered inward, splintering into 1,000 pieces. Through the swirling dust and debris, an army marched into the courtyard. At their head rode a man with eyes as black as pitch. Kaelin, the tyrant alpha of the Crimson Wastes, the monster who had hunted my kind to near extinction. Kaelin halted his mount. He looked down at the courtyard, his gaze passing over the kneeling guards, over Vane, until it locked entirely onto me. A cruel, triumphant smile stretched across his scarred face. "Finally found you," Kaelin purred. "My little songbird." Chapter 4. The council room smelled of fear and stale wine. "We must hand her over," Lord Thorne argued, slamming his fist onto the polished oak table. "Kaelin has an army at our doorstep. He demands the siren. If we give her to him, he withdraws. If we do not, he will bathe this keep in blood. She is a danger to us all." I stood in the corner, flanked by 2 guards. I kept my eyes on the floor. "She stays." Vane's voice was lethal. He stood at the head of the table. He did not yell, but the quiet menace in his tone made the elder councilman flinch. "Alpha," Thorne pleaded. Her voice forced our best warriors to the ground. "She is a weapon we cannot control." "She is mine," Vane snarled. He slammed his palms down, cracking the solid oak table straight down the middle. "Anyone who suggests sending my mate to Kaelin will have their throat ripped out. Council dismissed." The elders scrambled out of the room, leaving Vane and me alone in the heavy silence. Vane turned to me. The anger vanished from his features, replaced by a fierce, protective ache. He crossed the room slowly, as if approaching a skittish deer. "Talk to me," he whispered. I looked up at him. I opened my mouth. the muscles in my throat protesting after years of disuse. When I spoke, my voice was a soft, melodic hum, carrying a faint resonance that made the air vibrate. "He kept me in a cage," I whispered. Vane closed his eyes, a muscle feathered in his jaw. "I was a child," I continued, the words tumbling out, desperate to be free. "He slaughtered my family to harness our voices. He used pain to make me sing. He used my magic to torture his enemies. I escaped 8 years ago. I took a vow of silence to hide my power. I wanted to be invisible." Vane stepped into my space. He reached out, his large hands gently cupping my face. His thumbs brushed away tears I hadn't realized were falling. "You will never be in a cage again," he vowed, his voice thick with emotion. "I will tear him limb from limb before I let him touch a single hair on your head." I leaned into his palm. The warmth of his skin was an anchor in the storm. "Vane," I breathed, tasting his name for the very first time. He groaned, and control snapped. He slanted his mouth over mine. The kiss was not gentle. It was a torrential claim, born of desperation and instinct. His tongue swept past my lips, tasting, demanding, devouring. I tangled my fingers in his dark hair, pulling him closer. He walked me backward until my spine hit the stone wall, his body pressing flush against mine. I felt the hard, sculpted lines of his chest, the erratic thud of his heart. His teeth grazed my lower lip, drawing a single drop of blood. He licked it away, a feral rumble vibrating in his throat. It was consuming. It was everything. When he finally pulled away, we were both breathless. He rested his forehead against mine. "I have to prepare the troops. Stay here. Stay safe." He kissed my forehead and strode out of the room. I watched him leave. My heart ached with a love so profound it felt like a physical wound. Vane would fight for me. He would die for me. Kaelin's army outnumbered ours 3-1. If Obsidian Keep fought this war, thousands would die. Vane would die. I could not let my mate perish for my sake. I waited until the guard rotation shifted. Then, cloaked in darkness, I slipped out the postern gate. I walked alone into the biting wind, heading straight toward the enemy camp. I was surrendering to the monster, to save the man I loved. Chapter 5. The scent of my absence was a spark in a powder keg. When Vane returned to the council room and found it empty, his roar shook the very foundations of Obsidian Keep. He did not summon the guards. He did not formulate a battle strategy. The civilized king died in that room, leaving only a mate robbed of his soul. I was bound to a wooden post in the center of the enemy camp. Rough iron chains bit into my wrists. Kaelin stood before me, admiring his prize. "You always were prone to foolish martyrdom," Kaelin mocked, trailing a cold finger down my cheek. "Your king will die anyway, songbird. I just wanted you securely leashed before I burned his castle." The earth trembled. It started as a low vibration rattling the armor of Kaelin's soldiers. Then came the howling, a cacophony of rage echoing from the tree line. Out of the darkness lunged a beast, straight from nightmare. Vane had shifted, but he was not a normal wolf. Driven by the agonizing severance of our budding bond, his form had mutated. He was a colossal black dire wolf, towering over the enemy tents. His fur was pitch, his eyes burning like hellfire. The Obsidian army poured in behind him, but Vane was a force of nature. He tore through Kaelin's vanguard. Armor crunched beneath his jaws. He threw men aside like rag dolls, his colossal paws crushing the earth. It was a bloodbath fueled by pure, unadulterated devotion. I struggled against my chains. The iron cut my skin, but I ignored the pain. I watched my mate bathe in violence for my sake. his dark coat slick with enemy gore. Kaelin cursed. He snatched a spear from a weapon rack. The spearhead gleamed with a sickly green light, liquid silver and wolfsbane, a fatal cocktail for an alpha. Vayne was distracted, surrounded by a dozen elite fighters. Kaelin drew his arm back, taking aim at Vayne's blind spot. "No," I screamed. I didn't just shout. I pulled from the ancient well of magic in my blood. I sang. A high, piercing melody tore from my throat. The siren song manifested as a visible wave of pure white light. The magic hit my chains, shattering the iron links into dust. I fell to my knees, but I did not stop singing. I poured all my love, all my fear, all my soul into the music. The melody wrapped around Vayne. The white light sank into his black fur. I felt his power surge through our connection. The song made him faster, invulnerable, a god of war. He threw off the elite guards with a single devastating shake of his body. Kaelin realized his target was lost. His black eyes snapped to me. Fury twisted his scarred face. If he could not have the king, he would silence the weapon. Kaelin pivoted. He hurled the poisoned spear directly at my chest. Chapter 6. The spear tore through the air, hissing with toxic magic. I squeezed my eyes shut, still singing, preparing for the impact. It never came. A shadow eclipsed the moon. Vayne leaped across the camp, his colossal form moving faster than the eye could track. He threw himself between me and the weapon. The spear sank deep into Vayne's shoulder. He crashed to the dirt, shifting back into his human form. He gasped, his hands clutching the wound as the green poison rapidly spread through his veins, turning his skin ashen. "Vayne." I dropped to his side, pulling his head into my lap. Kaelin laughed, drawing a jagged broadsword. How poetic. The king dies at the feet of a servant. I looked down at Vayne. He was looking up at me, a soft, bloody smile on his lips. I did not panic. I was a Silver Siren. I pressed my hands directly over his bleeding shoulder. I opened my mouth and released a different song, not a battle cry, but a lullaby. A melody of healing, ancient and profound. Silver light poured from my palm, sinking into his flesh. The poison hissed, evaporating into harmless steam. The torn muscle knitted together, the skin sealing flawlessly. Vayne took a deep, shuddering breath. The color rushed back to his face. His amber eyes snapped open, burning brighter than before. He rose slowly to his feet. He did not look like a wounded man. He looked like death incarnate. Kaelin stepped backward, his arrogant smile faltering. Impossible. Vayne did not speak. He crossed the distance in a blur of motion. Kaelin swung the broadsword. Vayne ducked beneath the arc, his hand driving forward, plunging straight through Kaelin's armored chest. The tyrant gasped, dropping his sword. Vayne ripped his hand back and Kaelin collapsed, lifeless in the dirt. The enemy army, witnessing their invincible leader fall, dropped their weapons and fell to their knees in immediate surrender. Silence descended over the camp, broken only by the crackle of burning tents. Vayne turned to me. He was coated in blood and dirt, chest heaving. Above us, the blood moon hung heavy and red in the night sky. He walked toward me, his eyes locked on mine. He dropped to his knees before me. "You saved me," he rasped, his hands gripping my waist. "You came for me," I whispered, tangling my fingers in his dark hair. "I will always come for you." He pulled me down into the dirt, ignoring the gore, ignoring the army watching us. He pressed me against his chest. "Let me claim you. Let me bind my soul to yours, so they all know you are my queen." "Yeah," I breathed, tilting my head, offering my throat. Vayne's lips brushed the sensitive skin above my collarbone. He inhaled my scent deeply, a rumble of absolute satisfaction echoing in his chest. Then His teeth elongated. He bit down. The pain was a sharp, brief flare, instantly swallowed by an overwhelming rush of euphoria. The mate bond snapped securely into place, a permanent bridge between our minds. I felt his unconditional love, his fierce protectiveness, washing over my soul, erasing 8 years of loneliness and fear. We stood together hand in hand. The Obsidian Council members who had ridden out behind the army dismounted their horses. Lord Thorn looked at the dead tyrant, then at me. Without a word, the elder dropped to his knees, pressing his forehead to the dirt in total submission. I was no longer a mute servant. I was the Luna of Obsidian Peaks. Months later, the castle was bathed in sunlight. The scent of blooming roses drifted through the open windows of the royal solar. I sat on a velvet settee, idly humming a quiet tune. My voice felt natural now, no longer a hidden secret, but a gentle instrument I used to soothe Vane when the burdens of the crown grew heavy. Currently, Vane had his head resting in my lap. His eyes were closed, a picture of complete relaxation as my fingers carted through his dark hair. The ferocious Alpha King was currently purring like a contented cat. "I'm just saying lilies are entirely too depressing for a wedding." Pippa's voice echoed loudly from the corridor. The door burst open. Pippa marched in, clutching a scroll of parchment. Behind her trudged Lord Thorn, looking exasperated and deeply regretting his assignment as the royal wedding planner. "Lilies represent purity, you insolent girl," Thorn grumbled, rubbing his temples. "They represent funerals," Pippa shot back. "She's a siren. She needs something dramatic, like orchids or fire blossoms." Vane cracked one eye open. He glared at the intruders. "If you two do not cease this bickering, I will feed you both to the border patrols." Pippa didn't even flinch. She had quickly learned that the king's threats were mostly hollow when his head was in my lap. "My king, with all due respect, Lord Thorn wants to decorate the Great Hall like a mausoleum. Tell him, Odelia." I laughed, the sound bright and melodic. "Thorn, perhaps we can compromise on white roses." Thorn bowed stiffly. "As my Luna commands, though I maintain the lilies were a classic choice." He glared at Pippa, who stuck her tongue out at him the moment he turned around. As they bickered their way out of the room, closing the heavy doors behind them, Vane sighed heavily. He turned his face into my stomach, wrapping his arms around my waist. "Remind me why I didn't let Kaelin eat them?" he mumbled. I smiled, leaning down to press a kiss to his temple. "Because you love them, almost as much as you love me." Vane opened his eyes, the amber glowing with deep, unwavering adoration. "Not possible," he murmured, pulling me down for a slow, breathtaking kiss. "Nothing in this world could match how much I love you, my songbird."